Sky with you, getting high in the sunrise with you, getting through all the bad times with you. I wasn't missing a thing, now I do, and I wish that I could build a time machine, 'cause time moves on, and now you're gone. Oh, if only I could build a time machine, I'd come and get you, I can't forget you. I miss you, I miss you, I miss you all the time. I wish that, I wish that, I wish that you were mine. I miss you, I miss you, I miss you all the time. I wish that, I wish that, I wish that you were mine. What the hell am I doing this for? Lying here on my bedroom floor, finding peace in the memories of you. I wasn't missing a thing, now I do.
What is up? So today is Wednesday, January the 1st, 2020. First day of the new decade, I guess. My name is Ryan, and this is the Kingsman Report live podcast, the news everyone ignores. I have a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to go over. If you want to sub to the channel, go ahead and sub. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. But I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff. I'm going to go through a bunch of headlines. Some of them are kind of goofy. Some of them are very serious, especially the one that has to do with the thumbnail there. And it's the Ebola psy-op, bioweapons psy-op. So I'm going to talk about that. It may get me kicked off of here because of some of the words in there, but I'm going to read it anyways. I'm not here for all that other stuff. This goes on a podcast. If you want to go there, it's available on every place podcasts are available. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this. And of course, I'm going to cover what's going on over in Iraq. And this first article says U.S. troops fire tear gas at pro-Iran protesters in Iraq. And that's pretty much the gist of the article here. It's very short. It says U.S. troops fired tear gas on Wednesday to disperse pro-Iran protesters who were gathered outside the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad for a second day. Dozens of pro-Iranian militiamen and their supporters had camped out at the gates of the embassy in Baghdad, where they stayed the night. A day after they broke into the compound, trashing a reception area and smashing windows in one of the worst attacks on the embassy in recent memory. U.S. Marines guarding the embassy fired tear gas after the protesters lit a fire on the roof of the reception area. Smoke rose from the building. And this has been going around the internet everywhere. If you don't know about it, you're sleeping under a rock. This, and I don't even think this, what's going on right now, is going to be, I think this is just the catalyst, or the precursor to their retaliation that we're worried about because of the attacks that happened in northern Syria. I think this is just the beginning. This article here says 750 soldiers with the 82nd Airborne headed to CENTCOM. Additional 4,000 troops expected to deploy as Iran tensions mount. Goes on to say roughly 750 soldiers with the Army's 82nd Airborne Division are stated to be wheels up soon, headed for Kuwait, with an additional 4,000 troops expected to deploy later this week, a U.S. defense official confirmed to Military Times. At the direction of Commander-in-Chief, I have authorized the deployment of Infantry Battalion from the Immediate Response Force, the IRF, of the 82nd Airborne Division to the U.S. Central Command Area of Operations in response to recent events in Iraq, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said Tuesday evening in a written statement. Approximately 750 will deploy to the region immediately, and additional forces from the IRF are prepared to deploy over the next several days, Esper said. The deployment for additional troops adds to nearly 14,000 additional American troops that have deployed to the U.S. Central Command Area of Operations over the last 6 months to confront Iranian malign behavior. The deployment comes in the wake of 5 U.S. airstrikes on Sunday that targeted an Iran-backed militia known as this group here, the Kataib Hezbollah, a group. Oops. Hang on just a second. I didn't expect that to happen. A group U.S. officials have blamed for recent spate of rocket attacks against Iraq bases housing coalition troops. The Marines were requested by the U.S. State Department, and their deployment was approved by Iraq security forces. U.S. airstrikes were condemned by the Iraqi government. On Tuesday, a mix of Shiite militant group members and their supporters attempted to storm the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. And in their attempt, they weren't futile. They did storm it. Like I said, if you don't know what's going on, you're living under a rock. But they did storm it. They got in. They burned a bunch of stuff, as the prior article that I just read said. And this is where we're at right now. So I look at this to be the catalyst for what's about to happen there. If you follow any of the stuff on the Twitter feed, you could see the planes in sync in a basically a line flying over there. I believe it was last night. So, and a couple of Israel planes were wheels up as well. Hey Chuck, Happy New Year's, brother. Hope you had a good one, man. I can see you didn't get out and go act crazy. Chuck says, I thought we won this war. Man, okay, so I think I was talking to my brother-in-law and my wife about this. I know Israel wants a piece of Iran real bad because what's going on with their Iranian enrichment. So I'm looking forward to this, like I said, being the catalyst of what goes on. And of course, Israel getting involved, and that's going to give them a reason to go after Israel. And this will be, like I said in the video, in the podcast that I did, 2020, year of conflict. Because I believe for some reason inside of me that this year is going to be that catalyst. I didn't think that it would be this soon that it would happen, but it's happened a lot faster. And then you have, other groups over there that don't necessarily like them either. This article is interesting. It says human remains found in Idaho cave identified as outlaw who died over 100 years ago. Officials in Idaho on Tuesday announced that human remains found in a cave from a decades-old case have been identified. The dismembered and headless John Doe who remains were found in the civil defense caves near, I guess that's Dubos, Idaho in 1979 and 1991, was identified as those of Joseph Henry Lovelace. His remarkably preserved remains are thought to have been placed in the caves in 1916, and the announcement was made by the DNA Doe Project, a nonprofit organization that identifies Jane and John Does through advanced genetic genealogy techniques. A composite image created by the DNA Doe Project attempts to show what John Henry Lovelace might have looked like. DNA Doe Project says with the combined efforts of a 14-volunteer genealogist over the course of 15 weeks, we put in over 2,000 hours of genealogical research into this identification, said Anthony Redgrave, team leader for Clark County John Doe at the DNA Doe Project. Officials said Lovelace was an outlaw and a murderer who was born in 1870 in Payson, Utah territory to Sarah Jane Scriggins and Joseph Jackson Lovelace. His mother hailed from Massachusetts and his father from Indiana. Both came to the territory as early pioneers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In 1899, at age 28, he married Harriet Jane, quote, Haiti Savage in Salt Lake City, according to the DNA Doe Project. They divorced by 1904. Haiti filed for divorce on the grounds of desertion and failure to provide for her and their one daughter, the nonprofit said, citing newspaper reports and court proceedings. 1 year later, in August 1905, Lovelace was in Idaho and married Angus Octavia Caldwell, with whom he had 4 children from 1906 to 1913, and in March and December 1914. Lovelace was arrested for bootlegging, according to the DNA Doe Project. Agnes Octavia Caldwell Lovelace, 1880 to 1916, was murdered by her husband Joseph Henry Lovelace, and in December he made one of his many escapes by sawing through the jail bars, the organization said. In March 1916, newspaper reports said a man, now presumed by DNA Doe Project to be Lovelace, somehow stopped a train that was escorting him to jail and tried to escape. He was recaptured and sent to jail and escaped from that jail. On May 5, 1916, Lovelace's wife, Agnes Caldwell Lovelace, was murdered with an axe by a man called Charles Smith, who is described in some reports as her husband, and at least 2 of their children were present. I'm not going to go into this entirely. There is a picture. All the links are in the description to all these articles that I read. There's a picture of them there, and you can see, I mean, obviously how well the body was preserved. This guy, and I don't I don't know why he did this, and I'm not going to read. I'm going to call it M and H because I'm not here to promote drug abuse or anything like that. But this guy's, I don't know, man. It says Alabama man caught with M and H drugs asked for photo with arresting deputies. This deputy here is gigantic. But he got his wish and got a picture with these deputies. It says an Alabama man who was found to be in possession of narcotics during his arrest on Saturday had an unusual request for the arresting officers to take a photo with him. Heath Swafford, 24, it's probably just because he's 24 and ignorant, obviously. He's out selling drugs like that. Was arrested by deputies with the Morgan County Sheriff's Office after a foot chase on Lower Dry Creek Road in Lacey Springs community, according to a statement from the Sheriff's Office. It's an unusual turn. Swafford requested a photo with the arresting deputies, the Sheriff's Office said. And there's a photo there. That sheriff there, I wouldn't want him to tackle me. Says Swafford was found to have been carrying an amount of narcotics, the Sheriff's Office said, and deputies later discovered a stolen motorcycle at his residence. Deputies, despite the circumstances, a picture on the MCSO's Facebook page shows Swafford appearing to be all smiles alongside the 3 deputies who arrested him. Swafford is charged with 4 felony probation revocation warrants of possession of a controlled substance, theft of property, receiving stolen property, and first-degree criminal mischief. And he also faces drug and property crimes and is being held without bond, the Sheriff's Office said. So, I mean, he's one that takes the cake for the morons that I read on here that commit capers. But this lady right here, I think, pretty much takes the... I mean, she beats that guy when it comes to idiocracy, and especially if you're having to deal with a probation officer. This lady's up there with ignorance. I mean, all of them are, but this one is just dumb. And I mean, I don't wish ill on these people. I wish they'd get out and turn their lives around. But I mean, this is crazy here. It says Kentucky woman tried to get a dog to take her drug test. Now I know of people who've got other people's urine, left it in their car, it got too hot. They went to take a UA, and went and tested it, and the guy come back and told them either you're sick or this has been baking in your car for a long time, and they obviously didn't get the job and failed the UA. But this lady, it says Julie Miller was caught trying to sneak a urine sample into her drug test at the Bell County Probation and Parole Office on Monday, ABC affiliate Wait reported. Miller was read her Miranda rights after being caught by Pineville, Kentucky police officer, authorities said. She then admitted to bringing a sample of dog urine into the facility, and Miller now faces charge of tampering with physical evidence. Yes, because anytime they procure a sample from you, that's evidence of them, whether you're abusing drugs on your probationary period. I would know something about that, unfortunately. It says in August, a Utah woman called the police to report a drunk driver herself. And according to probable cause statement, Brenna Dawn Hernandez said she was following a drunk driver. But the description she gave a dispatcher for the alleged perpetrator matched her own. She also described her own vehicle as the one driven by the drunk driver she claimed to be tailing. Come on, people. Hernandez fled when she saw the officers that arrived on scene. Police eventually caught up and restrained Hernandez, who smelled of alcohol according to court documents. A nearly empty bottle of Fireball whiskey was found in the car cup holder, ABC4 News reported. So, she somehow got dog urine from a dog. I mean, I don't even know how you go about doing that, but she got dog urine and then went and tried to pass a drug test and failed. This guy, I'm covering a lot of these just because these are just crazy, stupid stories. Florida man crashes into bar to steal Dr. Pepper, deputies say. Mainly because I cover a lot of crazy stuff, and the stuff I'm going to get to is pretty crazy, so kind of trying to lighten it up a little bit. This is a Florida man, obviously Florida man because that's been a meme for the ages. A Florida man was arrested after he crashed a vehicle into a bar to steal a Dr. Pepper, deputies told WMBB. Gavin Lee, 28, is charged with armed burglary, and Bay County deputies were called to the Re-Rack bar in Panama City on Friday morning after a reported burglary. When he couldn't get into a closed bar, he allegedly drove his truck through the front glass. Inside, Lee got a Dr. Pepper from the cooler, set at a table in the bar, and proceeded to drink it, deputies said. Deputies said Lee had a gun in his pocket during the burglary. I just need to do like a segment that's like has to do with idiots like this. So this I couldn't pull up in the other program that I said, but this is a pulsating orb recorded flying erratically in South Carolina sky. Was it a UFO? Let's see. If you watch any of my videos, then you know what I think UFOs are. So I'll play this here for you guys. And obviously people listening aren't going to be able to see it, but if you look right here on this tree line, you can see this light orb, and it goes down, it's blinking, goes below the tree line, and then it raises up. You can see it fly by between the trees there. So I don't know, I mean, and then it goes back the other direction. So I don't know. I mean, you guys put your opinion in the comments, but I think that if you know what I think about UFOs, I think that we have technology that's far more advanced than what they tell us to, and that it will be used as a psy-op against us to get us to believe in a fake alien invasion. And I go off of what Ben Rich said at Skunk Works, Lockheed Skunk Works, that anything that we can imagine or anything you've seen in the movies, we've been there, done that, or figured out it wasn't worth it, and that it's hiding in the desert. I did a video on things that they think they saw at Tonopah. So, I mean, I think that there's things out there that we don't know about. And I'm going to get into, I was one of the first ones to talk about the stuff that was over. You want me to say what UFOs are again. So, if you know what a TR-3B is, and I can't show you a video of it because I got copyright stricken for playing a video of a TR-3B. A TR-3B Astra is a U.S. Air Force aircraft, and it has 3 balls on each corner that glow. It can spin in a circle, and it has a globe in the middle of it, and it flashes. They say that it is a interdimensional spacecraft and that it bends time and space. I think we're there. I think we're beyond that. I think we've re-engineered a lot of the technology that people want to say aliens gave us or Greys gave us, but I think they're interdimensional beings fallen angels, the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, because you got to read the Book of Enoch to find out, that these beings are cursed to the earth, and that in some instances people will go in sensory deprivation tanks, and they'll take dimethyltryptamine, and they will have interactions with these interdimensional beings, and they'll come out with all these advances in technology. They do the same thing exactly, is what Chuck is saying. Demons. They do the same thing that people that, if you know what, I think it's called Project Looking Glass, or Operation Looking Glass, which is pretty much the same thing. These people get high on psychotropic drugs, and then they go and they can astral project themselves. Kind of like what you saw in the movie The Men That Stare at Goats. It's along the same thing. So it's contact with these interdimensional beings that give us hidden technology or suppressed technology, and then we create things out of those. Can they take physical form? I don't know. We are a host body. I mean, we are a host. We carry a spirit in us. That's why you see people that can be demonically possessed and things of that nature. So I think that if they go into those types of realms, absolutely they can be possessed. I think they are demons. I don't necessarily believe in aliens. I mean, I know from reading the Book of Enoch what the Anunnaki is, what the fallen angels are. I know about a lot of that stuff. But this whole alien invasion stuff, then you're going to have to go with what Wilmer von Braun said. And when he talks about a fake alien invasion, it's control. It's order out of chaos. They scare us, they put fear into us, and then they create an order out of that chaos. And then the people that don't conform to it, they off them. I'm just going to be straight up with you there. So the article goes on to say, a father and his son headed to dinner in South Carolina said they saw something unexplained in the sky the day after Christmas, a glowing orb that resembled a star, but it bounced and floated nearly 5 minutes. Jay Wilson and his 14-year-old son Cameron posted a video of the orb on YouTube late last week, noting it was filmed over Lawrence, a town about 70 miles northwest of Columbia. The video shows the orb at a standstill, vanishing and moving back and forth behind a line of trees. It changes in direction are erratic and seem to be defying capabilities of a helicopter. And then down here it says, "No, don't come back here," Jay Wilson is heard saying in the video as the object moves closer. But we also, have, and I'm going to cover it more too. Chuck says problem, reaction, solution. That's exactly it. You create the problem, you get the reaction, and then you give us the solution. So I was one of the first ones to talk about this, and it's about the mystery drones that are flying over Colorado and now into Nebraska, and nobody knows what's going on with them, who they belong to. The FAA doesn't know. The DEA doesn't know. The FBI doesn't know. The local sheriff's department, police departments don't know. I will link that video in the end screen of this video when I'm done. And also, I'll link this podcast in the description whenever I get it uploaded after tonight. So the article says FAA probes cluster of mysterious drones flying over Colorado. So now it looks like the Federal Aviation Administration is going to try to do something about this because nobody knows what's going on with this. They had a drone that hovered over a small town for a very long time. The sheriff's department said it hovered over the town pretty much all night long. And there was another guy and his wife that chased it. It was in Washington County, Colorado. Chased one, and then ran out of gas. But these things have a 6-foot wingspan on them. Nobody knows what's going on with it. So the article goes on and says the Federal Aviation Administration has launched an investigation into a nighttime sighting of unidentified drones flying in formation over rural northeastern Colorado and southwest Nebraska over the last 2 weeks. The agency announced the investigation on Tuesday after a cluster of drones was spotted in at least 4 counties in Colorado, garnering national media attention. On some occasions, as many as 30 drones were seen flying at a time, and some of the drones spanning 6 feet in wingspan, according to Today. FAA spokesman Ian Greger said in a statement that multiple FAA divisions and government agencies are investigating these reports, adding the agency does not comment on details of its open investigations. No private companies nor government agencies have claimed the drones. The FAA said Tuesday it was investigating a slew of mystery drone sightings in Colorado, and the Phillips County, Colorado Sheriff's Office announced an investigation into the mysterious drones on December 20th, saying they have been multiple reports of drone sightings in the county over the last week. Deputies were out all night this evening along with Yuma County, Yuma County Sheriff's Office tracking these drones. Tonight we tracked over 16 drones between two counties, the Sheriff's Office said. We believe that the drones, though startling, are not malicious in nature, the Sheriff's Office said. Phillips County Sheriff Thomas Elliott said to Reuters that the drones with blinking lights are flying in square grid patterns nearly every night between 5 and 10 p.m. and appear to be widening their path. Now, Chuck, I'm sure this probably sounds suspicious to you because to me, what it sounds like is somebody's either doing land surveys, they're looking for something, and they're doing it from remote. So, I'm curious to find out what it is. But I'm going to tell you this, the FAA, I have a non-destructive inspection technician certification in aviation. And the Federal Aviation Administration doesn't play, especially when they are investigating something. So I'm going to keep following that and see what happens. This article's crazy. It says multiple people hospitalized after once-in-a-lifetime car wash disaster. Look at this mangled mess. It's insane. The article goes on to say 2 people were hospitalized after a freak collision at a car wash turned into a harrowing escape captured on security footage. The crash, which took place Monday at Prestige Car Wash in Taunton, Massachusetts, began when a white pickup truck backed into a self-service bay that was already occupied by another vehicle, WBZ-TV reports. Video of the incident shows the white truck speeding through the car wash parking lot before crashing into and ultimately rolling on top of a much smaller red sedan. There was a teenage girl trapped inside at the time. The teenager, who has not been identified, was reportedly sitting in the front seat of her boyfriend's sedan when she saw the truck coming. She then jumped into the car's back seat as the truck rolled on top of her. Thankfully, the teen did not receive any major injuries in the crash. However, she was pinned inside the car until firefighters arrived to rescue her. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, Scott Dexter, a deputy fire chief with the Taunton Fire Department, told the Providence Journal. I would never dream if it was me that someone would drive in while I was washing my car, he said. The truck's driver, who Dexter described as a man in his mid to late 60s, was reportedly unharmed. However, both he and the teenage victim were taken to a nearby hospital for examination. Despite the outcome, the crash's horrifying nature left some observers shaken. I almost started crying. Nicole Telese, who manages the car wash, told the Providence Journal. I was so emotional and I had trouble sleeping last night. The teenager's boyfriend, who was standing outside of the vehicle when the crash occurred, was reportedly unharmed, and Telese said she told both the teen and her boyfriend, "You guys both have angels with you." Police told the Providence Journal that the crash appeared to be accidental and was possibly caused by a floor mat getting stuck to the truck's pedal, adding that no charges have been filed as of Tuesday morning, and the car wash remained open following the incident. I'm glad they are okay. Interesting article here says scientists find a way to cure blindness. In a new study, researchers inserted a gene for a green light receptor into the eyes of blind mice, and a month later the mice were navigating around as easily as mice with no vision problems. They were able to see motion, brightness, changes over a 1,000-fold range, and fine detail sufficient to distinguish letters. The researchers say that within as little as 3 years, the gene therapy delivered via an unvaccinated virus could be tried in humans who have lost sight because of retinal degeneration. Patients may have enough vision to move around, and the therapy could potentially restore their ability to read or watch the video. The research was conducted by a team at the University of California, Berkeley. About 170 million people worldwide lived with age-related macular degeneration, which strikes 1 in 10 people over the age of 55. About 1.7 million people worldwide have the most common form of inherited blindness, retinitis pigmentosa, which typically leaves people blind by the age of 40. Currently, options for such patients are limited to electronic eye implant hooked to a video camera that sits on a pair of glasses. This is an awkward, invasive, and expensive setup that produces an image on the retina that is equivalent currently to a few hundred pixels, but normal sharp vision involves millions of pixels. Correcting the genetic defect responsible for retina degeneration is not straightforward either, because there are more than 250 different genetic mutations responsible for retinitis pigmentosa alone. About 90% of these kill the retina's photoreceptor cells, the rods sensitive to dim light, and the cones for daylight color perception. But retinal degeneration typically spares other layers of retinal cells, including the bipolar and retinal ganglion cells, which can remain healthy through those sensitive to light for decades after people become totally blind. So if you want to read more of that article, the link's in the description. This next article says a strange black hole is shooting out wobbly jets because it's dragging space-time. Some 78,000 light years away in a constellation of Cygnus lies a most peculiar black hole. It's called the V404 Cygni. And in 2015, telescopes around the world stared in wonder as it woke from dormancy to devour material from a star over the course of a week. That one event provided such a wealth of information that astronomers are still analyzing it, and they have just discovered an amazing occurrence: relativistic jet wobbling so fast their change in direction can be seen in mere minutes. And as they do so, they puff out high-speed clouds of plasma. This is one of the most extraordinary black hole systems I have ever come across, said astrophysicist James Miller Jones of the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research at Curtin University in Australia back in April. V404 Cygni is a binary microquasar system consisting of a black hole about 9 times the mass of the Sun and a companion star, an early red giant slightly smaller than the Sun. The black hole is slowly devouring the red giant. The material siphoned away from the star is orbiting the black hole in form of acertation disk, a bit like water circling a drain. The closest regions of the disk are incredibly dense and hot and extremely radiant, and the black hole feeds. As the black hole feeds, it shoots out powerful jets of plasma, presumably from its poles. So anyways, there's a video link to this. I can't play it, but let me see here. Hold on. Play it for a second. Yeah, they're gonna get me for that little bit of sound right there will get me a copyright strike. But anyways, if you want to read more about this, the link's in the description. You guys can go there and check that out. This article says, divide and conquer, Macron's plan to defeat French pension strikes. If you've been living under a rock, the people in France are protesting quite hard over a multitude of things, and this being the most recent. So this article says, a centerpiece of Macron's sweeping plans to reform France, the pension overhaul, would get rid of 42 separate schemes and replace them with a single points-based system the government claims would be fair and more sustainable. Unions have balked at the plan, which would see some public employees lose their right to early retirement and likely result in benefit cuts for millions. They have staged 4 consecutive weeks of strikes and have crippled train and metro services across the country and wreaked havoc on Christmas holiday plans. In his keenly awaited New Year's Eve address on Tuesday, Macron stated firm on the principles of the reform, including its most decried measure, raising the eligibility age for most pensions from 62 to 64. But he called for a rapid compromise between unions and his government, which has already offered concessions to a growing list of sectors in an effort to woo workers and divide the unions. Don't know how long this video is. Here, hold on. I'll play it for you guys.
Will climb down on pension reform, France's Emmanuel Macron left them disappointed, making clear he planned to press ahead.
I understand that changes can be hard, but fear cannot lead to inertia, because there's too much to do. I see how decisions made can at times cause worry and opposition. But do we have to give up on changing our country because of that? No.
But there was some talk of compromise with the unions, particularly on the thorny issue of workers in manual jobs and the age at which people become eligible for full pensions, both key stumbling blocks. Industrial action began nearly a month ago, making it one of the longest strikes in French history. Macron also spoke of the importance of investing in education and healthcare and the need to accelerate France's transition into a greener economy and to tackle racism, making clear he planned to press ahead. Some talk of compromise with the unions, particularly on the thorny issue of workers in manual jobs and the age at which people become eligible for full pensions, both key stumbling blocks. Industrial action began nearly a month ago, making it one of the longest strikes in French history. Macron also spoke of the importance of investing in education and healthcare and the need to accelerate France's transition into a greener economy and to tackle racism. The president also said he hoped France could maintain a solid relationship with Britain after it leaves the European Union in January.
All right. So the article goes on to say police officers gendarmes? I don't know what that is. I don't know. Firefighters and prison guards were among the first to secure guarantees that they would still be able to retire at 57, and in some cases at 52. Air traffic controllers, notorious hard bargainers, won the same rights, while air pilots and stewards obtained smaller concessions, as did truck drivers, fishermen, and Paris opera dancers, who have so far shunned the offer. As the list of exemptions grows longer, opposition parties have mocked a reform that is becoming universal in name only. Macron himself has warned against allowing special treatment for any one group, arguing that more concessions would surely follow, like dominoes. But two categories have been noticeably ignored by the government, as it doles out special exemptions to its, quote, universal retirement age. Workers at SNCF, France's national rail company, and RATP, the Paris transport firm, which have spearheaded the strike movement and rank among the reform's biggest losers. Since the start of the conflict over pension reform, ministers and lawmakers from Macron's ruling LREM party have repeatedly targeted the, quote, perks and privileges enjoyed by rail and metro workers, while sparing other sectors that also benefit from special pension schemes, known as, quote, regimes spéciaux. I don't know what that is. It is no longer fair that people who work for SNCF or RATP should have additional rights, said LREM lawmaker Aurore Bierge in an interview with Saud Radio on December 16, arguing that improved working conditions meant early retirement was no longer justified. There are clear electoral motives for the government interest on the issue, while polls continue to show broad support for the pension strikes. They also suggest a majority of the French are in favor of ending and early retirement schemes enjoyed by some categories of which SNCF and RATP are the most emblematic. So the link to this is in the description. This article says thousands march in Hong Kong on New Year's Day, which I read an article yesterday that they had planned on doing this anyways. And it says a mass anti-government rally was held in Hong Kong on New Year's Day as the region's unrest continued into the new decade. Gathering on grass lawns at Victoria Park under grey skies, citizens young and old, many dressed in black and some masked, carried signs such as, quote, "Freedom is not free," before setting off. It's hard to utter Happy New Year's because Hong Kong people are not happy, said man named Tung, who is walking with his 2-year-old son, mother, and niece. Look at all the people. People listening to the podcast won't be able to see this, but if you watch the video, I mean, the streets are flooded. This doesn't, I mean, we protest here in this country, but it's not, I've never seen this many people protest something. Here's another picture. Here's some more protesters. I mean, these crowds are massive. It says, unless the 5 demands are achieved and police are held accountable for their brutality, then we can't have real Happy New Year, he added, referring to the push for concessions from government, including full democracy and amnesty for over 6,500 people arrested so far, and a powerful independent investigation into police actions. The pro-democracy march is being organized by the Civil Human Rights Front, a group that arranged a number of marches last year that drew millions. Along the route, a number of newly elected pro-democracy district politicians mingle with the crowds on their first day in office, some helping collect donations to assist the movement. More pictures here. Just a whole bunch of people here. It says people wearing masks depicting LIHKG, Pig, and Pepe the Frog gather in Victoria Park. I don't even think we can put this Pepe the Frog on stuff anymore because they've kind of outlawed that meme, which I think is ridiculous. The government has already started the oppression before the new year began. Whoever is being oppressed, we will stand with them, said Jimmy Sham, one of the leaders of the Civil Human Rights Front. Thousands of Hong Kong revelers had earlier welcomed in 2020 on neon-lit promenades along the iconic skyline of Victoria Harbour, chanting the movement's signature 8-word Chinese protest couplet, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our time," for the final 8 seconds before the clock struck midnight. So I'm not going to read the entirety of the article there. Still praying for the people of Hong Kong. North Korea threatens to resume nuclear and ICBM testing. Yes. Because why wouldn't he? I mean, it says North Korea leader Kim Jong-un has said he is ending his suspension of nuclear and long-range missile tests he put in place during talks with the U.S. Mr. Kim also said his country would soon introduce, quote, a new strategic weapon, which a lot of people speculate that it is an EMP attached to one of the 2 satellites that are orbiting the world, which is a possibility. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But it would absolutely be strategic. It says, but he left the door open for dialogue, saying the scope of testing would depend on the U.S. attitude. Talks between the U.S. and North Korea have stalled, with Washington refusing to lift sanctions until Pyongyang fully abandons its nuclear program. The North conducted several small weapons tests late in 2019 in what was seen as an attempt to pressure the U.S. into making concessions. But the self-declared moratorium on nuclear test and test of the intercontinental ballistic missiles that could reach the U.S. mainland have been one of the foundations of the negotiations with Washington. Pyongyang has not carried out such tests since 2017, and any further testing is likely to infuriate President Donald Trump as the U.S. heads into an election year. So speaking at a rare party meeting the 1st of January, Kim Jong-un said North Korea was no longer bound by self-declared moratorium as the U.S. continued joint military drills with South Korea and had stepped up their sanctions. Under such condition, there is no ground for us to get unilaterally bound to the commitment any longer, the commitment to which there is no opposite party, and this is chilling our efforts for worldwide nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, state news agency KCNA quoted Mr. Kim as saying. He's also threatened that, quote, the world will witness a new strategic weapon by the North in the near future, while giving no further details. Yes, because everything he says is very cryptic and vague. He was speaking at a multi-day gathering party of leaders in Pyongyang, which is unusual for this time of year, and normally Mr. Kim will give a New Year's Day speech, but appears not to be doing it this year. In response to North Korea's leader's latest threats, Mr. Trump told reporters that he and Mr. Kim did sign a contract talking about denuclearization. I think he's a man of his word, he said, as he headed into New Year events in Florida. U.S. Foreign Secretary Mike Pompeo said he hoped the North would choose peace over war. If Chairman Kim has reneged on his commitments he made to President Trump, that's a deeply disappointing, Mr. Pompeo told U.S. broadcaster CBS. He made those commitments to President Trump in exchange for President Trump agreeing not to conduct large-scale military exercises. We've lived up to our commitments, and we continue to hold out hope that he will live up to his as well. Like I said, some people are speculating that it might be in one of the satellites that's flying around the country, around the world. So, I mean, I don't know. This, I think, is crazy for this guy to even say, but the article says Communist China worried about how many American citizens own guns and calls it a, quote, serious problem. Right. But you guys take all the guns, so. It says the Global Times, which according to Quartz is viewed widely as a voice of Beijing, slammed U.S. gun ownership in scathing opinion piece published on Sunday. According to Global Times, no official statistics are on record counting how many guns there are among the U.S. people, but the number is generally estimated to be in the hundreds of millions. I think it outnumbers, there's more guns per one human being, and I think it's like 3 to 1 or some crazy, 3 or 4 to 1. It's crazy. But I mean, if you obey the law and you do what you're supposed to be doing, then I see no problem with it. 30% of Americans say they own firearms, according to Pew Research Center survey conducted in 2017. Whether defined as human rights issue or public safety issue, mass shootings are shocking in a U.S. allegedly governed by law, the Global Times editorial team wrote. I have an opinion on mass shootings that I'm not necessarily going to give on here. Surely get me blocked off YouTube. It says the U.S. is beset with gun crises, and the spread of guns in the country has enabled crime to unleash greater killing energy, the Global Times averred. American society has already seen serious problems caused by private gun ownership of guns, but their massive number has contributed to enormous inertia. Many interest groups have benefited from it, and some ordinary people have truly gained a sense of safety. To change this habit, which has lasted hundreds of years, tremendous political courage and rearrangement of interest is required, the Global Times editorial team wrote. The Communist Party of China sponsored a tabloid painted... It says the Communist Party of China sponsored tabloid painted the U.S. as a lawless society with no answers for citizens seeking redress from a gun violence epidemic. Everyone must accept the risk that a shooting may occur at any time, anywhere, the Global Times editorial team wrote. Global Times accused the U.S. of endangering an environment where, quote, modern and barbarous forces interweave in a weird way. The communist news outlet attack on the Second Amendment came just one day after an armed parishioner stopped a potential mass shooting at a Texas church. Yes, thankfully that man was there. And that's proof of what a good guy is capable of doing to a bad guy with a gun. A live video caught the terrifying moment when the gunman stood next to the pews wearing a black hood and started firing a long gun before members of the church volunteer security team shot him at West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement. Britt Farmer, the senior minister of West Freeway Church of Christ, on Sunday told reporters he was grateful quote, our government has allowed us the opportunity to protect ourselves. Meanwhile, Hong Kong residents protesting the Chinese government have expressed admiration for the U.S. Constitution, flying American flags and holding up signs that read, "We need the Second Amendment." But they do even more heinous crimes than that. So now I'm going to get into this, and if you don't know what this is Deagle.com, and I've showed this before a couple times in videos that I've done for podcasts, and it talks about a population decrease of 100 million by the year 2025, and that's 69.5%. I think last time I looked at it was like a little bit higher than that. It was 74.9%. So there's only two ways that I believe that this could happen, and that's either through a civil war or both. It could happen through both at the same time, a civil war or an epidemic. I think a civil war is brewing in Virginia right now, honestly, and I hope that it doesn't. You know, the UN is hiring for disarmament officers in New York. There's rumored to have been, or people have seen UN armored vehicles in New York, and you know, driving around the highway or on beds of trucks going around highways in the area over there where this is said to pop off. They're going to go for the gun confiscation, which I hope that it doesn't happen. I'm praying that it doesn't happen. But this article, the stuff that I'm about to get into, is going to talk about what this is talking about. So, like I believe they create order out of chaos. I believe they cause things, like Chuck said in a comment in the chat earlier, problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, they get a reaction, and they offer the solution to the problem. That's just what they do. So, like I said, two things that can cause a mass depopulation of 69.5%, in my point of view, is an epidemic and a civil war, because this is pertaining to this country by 2025. So I'm going to go through some articles, and they started earlier last month, December 2nd. I'm going to go up to the article that came out today. So this is what the thumbnail is about. Ebola bioweapons psy-op. This first article says, Ebola's expiration, Merck's Ebola vaccine approved in Europe. So researchers, healthcare providers, and global health officials who have worked hard to grapple with the devastating Ebola outbreak of West Africa between 2014 and 2017 can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The very first Ebola vaccine was finally approved in Europe. Known as Ervebo, this Ebola vaccine is manufactured by the biopharmaceutical company Merck and was granted marketing authorization by the European Commission on November 11th. Professor Gary Whitaker, virology, shared his insight on the inner workings of the vaccine and its development, as well as its landmark achievement means for the future of global health. Okay, so that's enough I'm going to read for that. Kind of set a foundation where I'm going here. So this came out December the 19th. Ebola preparedness and response. This is from the FDA.gov. And it says the FDA is working to help expedite the development and availability of medical products such as treatments, vaccines, diagnostic tests, and personal protective equipment with the potential to help bring Ebola outbreaks under control as quickly as possible. So this is all the stuff. December 19th, they approved the vaccine. I just read the article for that. So this goes back. FDA awarded a contract in September. This is how fast this is ramping up. So there was the outbreak in 2014 through 2016. And it all of a sudden ramped up. Well, I'm going to show you why it's ramped up. It's because they're letting a certain people from the area where this outbreak was into our country, and they're shipping them all over the United States. November 12, 2019, EUA amendment in response to BioFire Defense LLC's request, FDA concurred with a modification to the authorization instructions for the use of film array biothreat e-test to include new data on analytical exclusivity, wet testing, and associated limitations. So November 6th, and you can go through all this. In addition to supporting ongoing response to Ebola outbreaks in the Democratic Republic of Congo, this is where the people are coming to. So if you haven't seen articles, and I'm going to share an article, if you have not seen the articles, where it says that we are seeing people at our border that are coming from this area, yes, to bring an epidemic here. Like Chuck said in the comments, they create the problem, they get the reaction, and they offer the solution. This is what they do. This is what they've always done. It's called order out of chaos. And then you can go through all this stuff. But this is all just ramped up from October. Okay, so this will go down. So from 2018, but it ramped up real fast towards the end of 2019. And I just showed you the Deagle.com. Why would there be a depopulation of 69.5% or 100 million people that fast? Two things: civil war or epidemic, or both. That fast. I don't think an epidemic is necessarily going to wipe people out that fast. And you're going to see in this article I'm going to read that people that are from that area have a higher immunity built up against this virus in particular. So they may not even show symptoms of Ebola as fast as somebody in our country would show it. So the next article here says, first FDA-approved vaccine for the prevention of Ebola virus disease, marketing a critical milestone in public health preparedness and response. So this is from December 19th. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced today the approval of Ebola. So this goes with the other article, and it goes into everything. This article says CDC issues, quote, advisory on Ebola tests and FDA approves vaccine. Coincidentally, CDC issues, quote, health advisory on Ebola rapid test and FDA approves new Ebola vaccine. This was December 27, 2019. Okay? It says, in an interesting coincidence, the CDC has issued an advisory on the use of an Ebola rapid diagnostic test only 3 days before the announcement of the new FDA-approved Ebola vaccine with a 100% effectiveness rate. The CDC has issued a health advisory for the use of a newly approved rapid diagnostic test for Ebola, and healthcare providers interested in testing for Ebola virus and ill-returning travelers should isolate the patient and contact the state or local public health authorities. An assessment of epidemiologic risk factors for Ebola and clinical presentation and history should be made as quickly as possible to ensure patient care is not compromised. CDC is available to provide consultation, technical assistance, and confirmatory testing as necessary. The advisory stresses that this is only a preliminary test and may not be accurate with the test caveats. So, there's all this stuff here that you can go through and read. You want to read these articles. So I pulled this up. It says, as migrants arrive, because this is going to be, some of these are links in the article, the final article that I'm going to read that's pertaining to this in particular. It says, as migrants arrive in Texas from the Congo, media buries the medical fact that Africans can carry Ebola without showing any symptoms. It says, it is a medical fact that people from Africa descent have enhanced natural immunity to various viral infections, including Ebola. In fact, migrants from Africa may carry Ebola and show no symptoms whatsoever. This simple, irrefutable fact appears to be completely unknown to all U.S. doctors, journalists, and CDC experts who claim Ebola can't possibly be carried to the U.S. from Congo because they often explain nobody is showing any symptoms. Yet it is very well known medical fact that Ebola carriers from Africa may be entirely symptom-free. If you don't believe me, go back to the June 27, 2000 article in the New York Times, authored by Lawrence K. Altman, that headlines, people carrying Ebola in some cases may be free of symptoms, which is right here. There's a little snapshot over here. It says the Ebola virus can also infect without producing illness, according to a new finding by African and European scientists, reported the New York Times. They found that Ebola virus could persist in the blood of symptomatic infected individuals for 2 weeks after they first exposed to an infected individual, and how much longer the virus can persist is unknown. Scientists have known that Ebola usually spreads from an infected person to another individual through contamination in clinics or hospitals, and new findings suggest that some cases may result from healthy carriers, and how often is unknown. Alright, so I wanted to show you that because they are coming into the country and they're being spread out everywhere. Let me make this smaller for a second because... So, and this is that last article here. This is how they're gonna get it to everybody. When there's an epidemic, they're gonna do like they did the H1N1. This article says CDC and FDA, quote, tag teaming Ebola bioweapons psy-op to push dangerous vaccines as part of an Ebola outbreak mass theater operation. So it says the federal government is ramping up its Ebola propaganda campaign once again with a new announcement from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention about a newly released Ebola rapid diagnostic test, which just so happens to coincide with the release of a new Food and Drug Administration FDA-approved Ebola vaccine that the agency claims has a 100% effectiveness rate. How they're getting this number, I don't have a clue. Just 3 days before the new Ebola vaccine was publicly announced, the CDC issued an Ebola, quote, health advisory urging healthcare providers that are interested in testing for Ebola virus and ill-returning travelers to isolate the patient and contact their state and local public health authorities for further instructions, which of course will include recommendations that suspected Ebola patients be infected with Ebola vaccines. In tandem with the FDA, the CDC is urging healthcare providers to take an assessment of epidemiologic risk factors for Ebola, as well as compile a clinical presentation and history as quickly as possible in order to ensure patient care is not compromised. And wouldn't you know it, but the FDA is waiting in the wings with its brand spanking new Ebola vaccine that is now urging these same healthcare providers to administer to their patients for public safety purposes. CDC is available to provide consultation, technical assistance, and confirmatory testing as necessary. This agency further announced about how it plans to tag team the FDA in ushering in, quote, awareness, aka panic, about the alleged threat of an Ebola pandemic. The federal government has been bringing in potentially Ebola-infected, quote, refugees from the Congo and dispersing them throughout the country, but there's nothing to see here, folks. It says it is our view that this is being done in synchronization as a part of coordinated disinformation campaign. The federal government appears to be intentionally creating the conditions necessary for the future Ebola outbreak or a series of outbreaks to occur, and is now conveniently has all of the, quote, solutions ready and waiting, including diagnostics tests and Ebola vaccines. The ultimate goal here seems to be to create a major public health crisis in order to push mass vaccination with these new FDA-approved Ebola vaccines. The contents and side effects of which are currently unknown. After all, our government was caught back in the summer importing migrants from the Congo into our country via Texas and sending them to the four corners of America, and the general public is none the wiser. This article is in the description, but if you want to, you can click this link here. It'll take you to that article, which I've seen that pop up many a times, was this article about people from Congo that were being caught at our border. It says many of these migrants very well could have been infected with Ebola, though we'll never truly know since none of them were tested before being dispersed all across the country to unknown locations. And now the CDC and FDA are unveiling their vaccine, quote, cure just in time for what appears to be a planned epidemic. It says, but these so-called solutions are flawed at best, seeing how the CDC itself openly admits that its new rapid diagnostic test for Ebola isn't necessarily accurate, known as the OraQuick Ebola Rapid Antigen Test, and this test may, quote, result in false positive results, admits the CDC through the agency, though the agency is still pushing it, in circumstances where more sensitive molecular testing is not available. All or-quick test results, both positive and negative, are considered to be preemptive, but the CDC, which means by the CDC, which means that they must be further verified through the RRT PCR testing that is available at 69 LRN laboratories located in 49 states, and the CDC in coordination with state and local health authorities. But once again, it can't be stated enough, Ebola is a problem that never would have been a problem in the first place had the federal government not facilitated the bringing of, quote, refugees from Ebola-stricken countries. And truth be told, there still isn't really an Ebola problem, at least not yet, despite the fear-mongering coming from the CDC and the FDA. But one thing is clear, our country's overlords sure are trying hard to make Ebola a problem. The stage is set, so to speak, for an eventual Ebola outbreak or two, and the government obviously plans to fearmonger the gullible public into accepting its, quote, remedy in the form of mass chemical injections, all for people's protection, of course. If the government really wanted to prevent the Ebola crisis here in America, they would never have shipped Congolese immigrants and resettled them across the country. They also wouldn't have turned away patient 0 from receiving a proper Ebola test during the last Ebola crisis that was reported back in 2014, leaving this patient to potentially infect others. As you may recall, confirmed Ebola patients are actually sent to local hotels all around New York City several years back, putting other hotel guests and their close contacts at risk of infection. And local health officials were insistent that this was no big deal and that people shouldn't worry. There have been so many instances like this of what appeared to be incompetence that, upon closer investigation, proved to be intentional acts of disease violence by our own elected officials. In other words, the purpose is to intentionally cause an Ebola epidemic, though this evil agenda has thus far been unsuccessful. But this is not to say that it won't become successful in the coming weeks or even days as nefarious government entities work tirelessly to weaponize this deadly disease here in the West, and it's only a matter of time before the right combination of factors sends Ebola spreading like wildfire, which is the catalyst that the, quote, deep state needs to advance its Ebola vaccination agenda. Remember, by the time we hear about something, the government agencies have known about it for a while and kept to themselves so as not to cause panic, writes Daisy Luther of the Organic Prepper. It could be wise to get ahead of the curve with any preparations you may need to make. While the recent developments must be purely coincidental, she further jokes, and I'm not suggesting that a widespread outbreak is imminent in the United States. I suggest you pay attention to the patterns that are beginning to emerge. So, that's why I titled this a psy-op, because to me, all of that crap, all of those inoculations are some sort of psy-op. Like I've said before, I've had people that have commented in the live feed that have had a reaction that lasted 10 years from a certain vaccination. And I'm going to say the word on here, I really don't care. He had a flu vaccination and he suffered an issue from it for 10 years. I don't get that crap. I've never had the vaccination. But I look for something like this to happen, and then I was going to show you this because this will be the way that it spreads. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but we had the whole H1N1 swine flu thing going on, and this was a long time ago. This was like 2009. This is from Paul Joseph Watson. Where they were actually doing roadside checks, basically, like you would stop a drunk driver on the road. They were doing this, but it says former state trooper Greg Evanson spoke of similar checkpoints recently when he told an audience in West Virginia that preparations to enforce mandated vaccinations were being focused around preventing those who haven't had the shot from traveling. Okay? So, even if you're hiding out and you're thinking, I'm not going to get this, they probably have a plan on how they're going to get it everywhere. They may or may not. I mean, I'm not trying to cause fear in anybody either, but I think, like I said, two things can cause a decline of population by 65.9% or 100 million people: a civil war and an epidemic, or two the same things at the same time. And there's one brewing over in Virginia right now as far as the Civil War goes, and I pray to God it doesn't happen, because it's going to be a catalyst for what goes on in the rest of the world. But I mean, just pay attention to what's going on, especially with this type of stuff. They kind of snuck a little bit of articles out there that said that people from Congo were at our border, and I don't know if anyone ever paid attention to that, but it got kind of snuck in the news. I don't think mainstream media was reporting on it either. But if they're taking diseased people and they're putting them around the area, and those people aren't necessarily infected by it, I mean, they're infected by it, but they don't show symptoms of it because their immunity to it is, I guess, regular for where they come from. And then they're infecting people like us, and one person gets it, they're going to roll this thing out, I guess, to a point to where they say everyone needs it, kind of like they try to do with the flu shot, where everyone needs it to protect themselves. And they haven't tested it, and they can say all they want to that it's 100% effective. How? How do you know it's 100% effective? It says they've FDA approved an Ebola vaccine that the agency claims has a 100% effectiveness rate. On how? Like, I mean, I don't know. Are you giving people this shot and then throwing them with a bunch of Ebola-infected people and seeing if, I mean, it could be water in that damn thing for all you know. But anyways, that's pretty much all I have for the night. As always, if you want to read any of the links to any of those articles, they're all in the description below the video. I'll put a link to this podcast in the description as well. And if you guys want to become a contributor, you can go to Kingsman Report on Anchor, and you can become a monthly supporter. You can also leave a message for the podcast. All the links to where it's available are on here as well. And they're also available in the About section of my YouTube channel, so you can go there and find links to everywhere. It's available everywhere podcasts are available. Also, a link to my website's on here. It's also in the About section. So that is all that I have for this evening. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. If you guys ever want to call, the number scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you ever want to send me articles, you can send them to the email that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. KingsmanReport2019@gmail.com. So until next time, you guys watch out for each other. Stay safe. Don't get any Ebola vaccinations. I'm going to keep following this thing. And the weird drone thing going on. But anyways, you guys take care of each other. Y'all bless and shalom.
I miss you.